Most respected Thai dear sisters, today is the 17th of November in the year 2020, and we are in the Lower Hamlet in the winter retreat. It's a little bit cold. It's not really the winter retreat, it's the autumn retreat. But because it's a little bit cold, I call it the winter retreat. So we will listen to 3 sounds of the bell to begin. Most respected Thai dear sisters, our gatha for this week is placing my shoes neatly. I vow that all people always take mindful steps, coming in and going out in freedom. This gatha is a little bit like the gatha for washing our hands. We vow that all people will have hands skilled to take care of the planet. And here we vow that all people will have feet that walk mindfully. And Thai has said that the way to bring peace in the world is to be able to, everyone to be able to practice mindful walking, so that we can come back to the present moment as we walk, take care of ourselves, and take care of Mother Earth as we walk. And the way we walk on Mother Earth is quite important, because we can put all our love on the earth when we walk, and it changes our way of looking at the earth. We begin to see the earth as spirit. We begin to see the earth as not separate from us. So that is part of this gatha. We want everyone to be able to walk like that. And then coming in and going out in freedom is a very beautiful way of practice. Whenever we come into somewhere, or wherever we go out of somewhere, we feel at ease. And coming in and going out, of course, also refers to being born and dying, or being continuing like that. That we're able to be free at the moment when this body disintegrates. So the coming in and going out, it refers to our everyday life, every time we go in and out of a house or a room, but it also refers to our ability to live this life in freedom. Last time we were talking about the Dharma seals of Plum Village, and someone asked about the fruits of Plum Village, and the seals and the fruits are not the same. But we have fruits and we have seals. Yeah, a seal is what you put on the letter to show that it really comes from you, or whoever's sending it. So we talk about Dharma seals, and that is what we were talking about last time. So today we can look a little bit more at the Dharma seals. Pháp ấn seal. So this word Dharma is quite interesting because it has two meanings, and one meaning is the teachings, the Buddha Dharma, the teachings and the practice, and the other meaning is the nature of life, the way things are. And we understand it in both ways. We understand it as meaning that these are necessary parts of the teaching. Trước nó hay, nó bây giờ nó hết hay rồi. Nó quá lớn. Therefore, they are necessary ingredients of the teaching, and the teaching which doesn't go along with them is not a Buddhist teaching. So that is the meaning of Dharma seal when we're talking about the teaching. But then the other meaning of Dharma seal is that it is a sign or a mark of the way things are, the way things are. So, for instance, things are impermanent. Like in the Gatha it says that Sawa samskara ju han vô thường. All samskaras are impermanent. So that is a mark of life. It's not just a mark of the teachings. And for that reason, in the Theravada, they talk about impermanence, no self, and nirvana, not as Dharma seals, but as Dharma marks or Dharma signs, tilakkhana, signs of what life is. So we have to understand both those meanings of Dharma when we talk about the seals. So in the sutra, we have the sutra Dharma seals. So here we have sutra. And then we have Plum Village Dharma seals. So when we talk about the Dharma seals of Plum Village, we're talking more about the teachings of Plum Village. Because when Thai taught the Dharma seals, Thai wanted us to know that in the future we can always develop new Dharma doors. But when we develop new Dharma doors, they must be according to the Dharma seals of Plum Village. So then we think, whereas the Dharma seals in the sutra, they refer to the nature of how things are, and they also refer to the teachings. But in Plum Village they refer to the teachings. So we put the sign in here. Right. So in the sutra we have impermanent. And we have nirvana. But then you recognize something else also. There is a sutra that's called the Sutra on the Dharma Seal. It's also Kinfapan. It's also called the Three Doors of Liberation. And so we have 3 more Dharma seals from that sutra, which is emptiness, karma, signlessness, sign, jiha, signlessness, signlessness, votu, and aimlessness, vô tác, aimlessness, vô nguyện. Okay. Non-attainment. There's nothing to attain. There's not an object outside to attain. Aimlessness, outside of consciousness. So these all can be called Dharma seals according to the sutra. And then we saw that last time that in Plum Village we have 4 Dharma seals. Right. Go as a river into being. Into being of time. Time. And truths. And Satna, Yi Thục. I know, but I don't know the English. Momentary. Right. So these are very deep teachings, but they are all part of the Plum Village teachings. Momentary ripening is to help us look at this whole matter of birth and death and samsara in a more concrete way. And when the Buddha said in the Anuruddha Sutta, I've only taught 2 things, suffering and the end of suffering, it's because the Buddha doesn't want us to get caught in ideas of what happens after we die, because it doesn't help us at all in our practice. So all these things to help us in our practice and not get caught in speculations and metaphysical theories and philosophy. So then I talk, and then it becomes philosophical, and I talk about it. But this momentary ripening is to keep us in the present moment, and to see that we've been born and dying at every moment. So on last Sunday, we learnt about the 4 criteria, if you remember. So that is also helpful for us to understand a little bit the seals, if we understand the 4 criteria. So the first one is the worldly criteria. According to the world that we're in, the concepts that we use, the concepts of time and space, when we give a teaching, we can't just not use those concepts. So if you have concepts of time and space in teaching, although you know that time and space are, you still you don't complain about it, because you know that is a skillful means of the Buddha to be able to give us a teaching. So the second one is the person criterion, or people. And everyone is different, and if you give a Dharma talk to farmers, you will not say the same as if you gave a Dharma talk to teachers. And the third criterion is the healing. And the fourth criterion is absolute truth. So when you look at these criteria, you can, if you like, you can put them in 2 different categories. This one we can call skillful means. And this is the absolute truth. Skillful means is, in Vietnamese is phương tiện quyền xảo. So these are the skillful means that the Buddha teaches by using them. So one of them is healing. And if we look at here, if we look up here at these sutra Dharma seals, something we have to understand is that Plum Village has Dharma seals, but it doesn't mean to say that Plum Village doesn't respect the Dharma seals of the sutra. Plum Village also has, in the teachings of Plum Village, we also have all these Dharma seals. We don't say we just have Plum Village Dharma seals and we don't have these, but we have them both. When we're particularly thinking about how to develop Plum Village teachings, we look at these, but we also have to look at these. If you have a Plum Village teaching which has this Dharma seal and doesn't have this one, it's not Plum Village teaching. So we have to recognize that. So in these 2, you also see that there is a kind of, these 2 go together. And this one is going with the absolute truth. Nirvana is the absolute truth. And these 2 are more like skillful means. Impermanence and no self are skillful means. They are not dogma, they are not doctrines, they are medicine. So when we have the word, the criterion healing, it means the teachings are a medicine. So impermanence is a medicine. It's not a dogma or doctrine. It's a medicine to heal permanence, Because normally we are caught in wanting things to be permanent. And we believe that things are permanent. We believe we were the same yesterday as we are today. So we have that very strong, deep down belief that we are permanent and other things are permanent. So we need the medicine of impermanence, and that is the healing, in order to be able to heal our idea of permanence. But the Buddha said that if you get caught in impermanence, if you make impermanence into a doctrine or a dogma, it's very difficult to find a medicine to cure it. So no self is the same. Sometimes people ask the Buddha, is there a self? And the Buddha didn't answer. And then they would ask, do you mean there's no self? And the Buddha also didn't answer. Because self and no self is a medicine. It's to heal the idea of a separate self. It doesn't mean to say that we never talk about a self anymore. And the Buddha teaches, come back and take refuge in the island of yourself. Be an island unto yourself. Take refuge in yourself. So we can't get caught in a theory or a doctrine of no self. No self is a teaching, a healing, because we're so often caught in our separate self. And nirvana is the absolute truth, where there's no more concepts, the silence of all concepts. And emptiness and signlessness and aimlessness are all ways of practice that help us realize nirvana. So when we look at Plum Village, the Plum Village Dharma seals, we see the importance of the practice, the uninterrupted practice, the daily practice and the teaching, always at every moment, to be arriving in the present moment. And this is linked to the seeing that we're being born and we're dying at every moment. This particular Dharma seal is about Sangha building. It's about the importance of Sangha. It's to see that the Sangha building is the most precious and the most important thing, the thing that the world needs most of all. So this is something that's more stressed in Plum Village, and we don't see it over here. The interbeing of the times. It's like when we have meditations where we practice to see ourselves as a 5-year-old child. And the 5-year-old child, in fact, is in the past. But the 5-year-old child is also, we can still touch in ourself. So that is the interbeing of the past and the present. We're also in touch with the 5-year-old child of our parents. So these are the Dharma seals. When we read the early sutras, especially in the Sutta Nipata, And the equivalent of the Sutta Nipata is the Nghia Tuk Kin. We see how the Buddha stresses that the Buddha is not caught in any doctrine, any dogma. But later on, for using skillful means, we see that the Buddha does give us different practices to do, and different teachings like the Noble Eightfold Path and the 37 wings of the Dharma, the five powers, the 5 faculties, and so on. The Buddha gives us those things to practice as skillful means. So the Buddha is not caught in theory of impermanence or no self. It's a skillful means to help us see the truth or get closer to the truth. These are fruits of the practice. Holy fruits or noble fruits, sometimes called. And we know in the sutras sometimes we hear the 4 kinds and the 4 pairs and the 8 kinds of holy people that make up the Sangha. So the fruits refer to this. And again we have the sutra fruit. And we have Plum Village fruit. So when we look at the sutra fruits, they are not very easy to understand. And in fact, we say sutra, but in fact it's also Shastra. Shastra is Lun. And that most of what we read in books about the fruits from original Buddhism, it doesn't come from the sutra, it comes more from the Shastra. It comes from the Abhidharma. That is not so much taught by the Buddha, but compiled by the schools after the Buddha. So the first one is called stream enterer. Enter the stream. And the first fruit in Plum Village is arrived home. So it's the same as the first Dharma seal of Plum Village. But this time it's about how we practice rather than about the teachings. Something that we've managed to do in our practice, is a fruit. Stream entry is quite interesting. There are, in the sutra and the shastra, there are 4 fruits. Stream entry, coming back one time, not coming back, and arahat. And the one the Buddha teaches most of all and mentions most of all in the sutra is stream entry. And before we had the Plum Village fruits, we had Shuom used to talk, and still does, about stream entry. Shuom said that stream entry is like when you get on the TGV to go to Paris. Once you sit on the train, you know that you will arrive in Paris. And we know that also there are 4 pairs and 8 kinds of holy people. So there are 4 fruits, and each one is divided into 2. So stream entry, on your way to stream entry and stream entry. So this is 1A, first fruit. This is 1B. And you want an example, when you get in the car to go to the station, Sainte-Foy-la-Grande, you're on your way to getting on the drain. So that is like on your way to stream entry. There are those who have entered the stream and those who are practicing to enter the stream. That is the first one. And Shuom also said that in the Sangha, there are those of us who have really arrived and really home, and those of us who are still practicing to arrive and be at home. So this stream entry is talked about in the sutra quite a bit, and especially in the Samyutta Nikaya. There's a whole chapter in chapter 55 of the Samyutta Nikaya, Tương Ứng Bồ. There's a whole chapter on stream entry. So many sutras about stream entry. And in all those sutras the Buddha says, what is it to enter the stream? And there are four things. And the first is to have unshakable faith. That is niềm tin bất động. That is unshakable faith in the awakened ones, in the Buddha, unshakable faith in the Dharma, the teachings of love and understanding, and unshakable faith in the Sangha. You know when the Buddha taught the layman Anathapindika in the Sutra on the White-Clad Disciple, the Buddha said that in order to dwell peacefully happily in the present moment, Drishta Dhamma Sukha Vihari, you practice Anusmriti, you practice Tuiniyam, mindfulness of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And that is come from your faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And every time when we come into the meditation hall, or when I come into the meditation hall, and before we leave the meditation hall, I touch the earth 3 times, and with all my ancestors, I take refuge in the awakened nature, in the Buddha in myself, and the Buddha in others. And I establish my faith, my confidence in the Buddha in myself and in others. And then the second time touch the earth, I establish my confidence in the teachings I've received. And the third time I touch the earth, I establish my confidence in the Sangha. Of course, the Sangha is not perfect, but it is the vessel for me to practice, and therefore it's as precious as the Dharma is. It's the boat that holds us as we practice. So every day as a practice to establish that kind of faith. And the fourth thing the Buddha said is the faith in the precepts, in the mindfulness trainings, to practice the mindfulness trainings and to have complete confidence in the mindfulness trainings. And when Thai talks about arrived home, Thai says that the fruit of this practice is when we feel that we have arrived in the Sangha, and we don't need to go anywhere else. We know that the Sangha is our home. And the second thing that Thai says is we practice the precepts. So, in fact, these two things, they are closely connected. We take refuge in, Thai's description is we're taking refuge in the Sangha, taking refuge in the precepts. But of course in the Sangha, the Buddha and the Dharma are there. Whenever a monk passed away, many monks would come to the Buddha and they would say, what fruit did that monk have? Did he have the fruit of stream entry, or did he have the fruit of non-return, or one more time return, or arahat? And one time the Buddha said to Ananda, I'm tired of answering this question. Every time one of the monks passes away and they come and ask me that, I don't want to answer it anymore. Please teach the monks that what they have to do is come back to themselves and ask themselves, have I entered the stream? Have I the fruit of stream enterer? And that is the most important thing. And another time a monk asked the Buddha, what is the stream? What is the stream? And the Buddha said, the stream is the Noble Eightfold Path that we enter. That is the practice of the precepts, is the Noble Eightfold Path also. So the second Plum Village fruit is Andrew has what? dwelling happily, dwelling happily. It's a little bit different from arrived home. When I first came to Plum Village, I was living in the lower hamlet. I used to feel it's like my home. And all the time before that, I was in India and Greece. I went stay in many countries, but I never felt it's like my home. But when I came to Plum Village, I felt this is like my home. So in a way, I had a bit of this fruit, or maybe on the way to this fruit. And then we have on the way to dwelling happily. But still, I used to feel that, it would be good to go back to England and have a monastery in England and end my life in England. So I didn't, although I felt at home, I didn't dwell, not always dwelling happily. And if something went wrong in the Sangha, something I didn't like, then I always thought, one day maybe we will have a monastery in England or something. I never had the idea to leave the Sangha, by the way. But not always dwelling happily in the present moment in the Sangha. And this is talked about when the Buddha teaches Anathapindika. He talks about dwelling happily in the present moment with the help of mindfulness of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and the precepts. We can dwell happily in the present moment. So this teaching, it comes directly from the sutra. It's a teaching for us to practice at every moment, to recognize how many conditions we have for happiness, and to be able to stay in that present moment even though it's unpleasant. So the second fruit in the Shastra is called once returned. Once returned. And this is difficult for us to understand. If you return where? And if you return, it means you go somewhere. Where do you go before you return? These things are not clear in the sutra, so I think this is why I really needed for us to have more concrete fruits for us to be able to practice. Because you could think, this means that when I die, I go somewhere else. I don't know where I go. That is an important question. And then I come back again and I get born again. And then I practice, I get born again, and I practice to end suffering, and then I die again, and then I go to the Pure Land and I attain nirvana. So that kind of teaching is not very concrete. So once returned, I say that they only need, what the usual way described, only need to come back to this world. The word they use is this world. Only need to come back to this world one more time and will be able to end suffering. You come back to this world and you practice in this world and you end the suffering in this world, I think. Or else you, at your death, you go to somewhere where there's no suffering, like the pure abodes. But if you want, you can see this in another way. We talk about Plum Village as a kind of pure land. When we talk about, or we talk about Yudram is also a pure land. Plum Village, Thailand, also a pure land. They're all pure lands that Thai has given us to practice in. That is normally what we think about adorning a pure land. We think about setting up a practice center. We call that a pure land. So maybe one time you come to Plum Village and you practice and you enjoy it, and then you have to go somewhere else. You have to go back to your home if you're a lay person. And then when you go back home, you suffer. So you think, oh, I'll have to go back to Plum Village again to make my practice stronger. So we can think about one's return in that kind of way, which means it just refers to our present life. We don't have to think about what happens after we die. We come to our pure land and then we have to leave it for some reason, and then we have to come back again and practice again. Dwelling happily, we don't leave our pure land. We can always be in touch with it, whether we are in Yudram, whether we are in Plum Village, whether we are in EIAV, we can dwell happily. So over here we have interbeing. So interbeing is also something very concrete. I can see myself in my sister. I can see myself in my brother. I can see my sisters in me. I can see my brothers in me. I know that my difficulties, the difficulties of my sisters, are not separate from my own difficulties. And the happiness of my sisters is not separate from my own happiness. So once I'm able to see that and live that, then I have the fruit of interbeing. And Thai says that if we are able to practice dwelling happily in the Sangha, then the fruit of interbeing is, these are the things we really need to practice. Put our whole heart into practicing, and then the fruit of interbeing and the fruit of no birth, they follow more naturally. If we're not able to dwell happily in the Sangha, then it's difficult for us to recognize how we are with our sisters and how our happiness is with the happiness of our sisters. the fruit of no birth and no death is also closely connected with interbeing. When we see how we interact with everything in the universe, we see how the earth, air, water and fire in us interact with the earth, air, fire and water outside of us. We recognize no birth and no death. And we contemplate, we look deeply into the leaf, into the cloud, into the wave, in order to be able to see these things that are not born and don't die. But if we practice these here, and then we realize interbeing, we will realize no birth and no death without having to make an effort. Yeah. So this is our practice. The other things, they come more naturally. And here we have the no return. So we also have to be a little bit careful of this teaching, because we get caught in ideas of what happens after we die. And normally the way it's described in some of the sutra and in the shastra is that the person is born spontaneously. So it's called spontaneous. Rebirth or birth, spontaneous birth. You know, there's birth from the womb, birth from eggs, and spontaneous birth. So normally before the birth, there's what we call birth. There's something called becoming. Like you have to be in your mother's womb if you're a human being for 9 months, or you have to be an egg if you are a bird for a certain amount of time. But then this spontaneous birth means that you don't have to be in the womb, or you don't have to be in an egg. But through your meditation, you're just born in a certain place. Like you're born in the pure abodes of the gods. One of the heavens is called the pure abodes. Maybe it's the basis for the pure land. So you're born there, and when you're born in that pure land, you practice and you realize nirvana. You don't have to come back to this world like the once for eternity, in order to put an end to suffering. Once you're born in the pure abode, there isn't any suffering there, but you still manage to realize nirvana. How you do that, I don't know, but that happens. And in the Mahayana now, when they teach, when you are taught about the Pure Land, it's not a place where you stay forever. It's a place where you go to practice. And you practice to realize non-fear. And then you can come back, and you can come back to help all beings. So the Pure Land is not really non-return. You will return from there in order to be able to come back to the world of suffering and help beings. Like in the discourse on the 8 realizations of great beings. So to talk about non-return is not really possible if you have the bodhicitta. You want to come back and help. However, we need a pure land, we need a place sometimes to support our practice. And the Pure Land is a place where you have many bodhisattvas to help you to practice. So the word arahat also has many meanings, the fourth fruit. And before the Buddha, in the Brahman and the religion, they also talk about arahat. So the Buddha just took that word arahat from the Brahman tradition. And the word arahat, it means someone who is worthy of offerings, worthy to receive offerings, worthy to receive a respect. So it is the highest fruit, it's talked about as the highest fruit. And Chuam also talks about no birth and no death as the highest fruit. And the Buddha is called an arahat when we say Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato. We call Buddha a arahat. And usually the arahat is described as someone who has broken the fetter of being. A fetter is a knot, is a ketshu, fetter of being. So this means that the arahat has broken through the concept, the notion of being and non-being, the notion of birth and death that goes along with that. So it's very like the plum village fruit. The arahat is someone who has done what needs to be done. But the Buddha also makes it very clear when talking about the practice of mindfulness. The Buddha said that the arahat practices mindfulness. The person on the way to stream entry practices 4 establishments of mindfulness. The person who has entered the stream practices the 4 establishments of mindfulness. And then the Buddha doesn't mention these 2. The Buddha said the monks in the higher training, that is, monks who have practiced some other fruits, they also practice the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and the arahat also. They all practice the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So an arahat, we say the arahat has done what needs to be done, but continues to do what needs to be done, namely the practice of mindfulness. So, dear sisters, if you have any questions, please write them down. And if in the new hamlet, somebody can send me an email. And in the lower hamlet, you can give your question to Aya, Ling Jiwa. Thank you.